time together over these next 5 weeks during Lent. The Lord be with you. Let us pray. Come, Holy Spirit, kindle the hearts of your faithful and fill us with the power of your love, that we may know that we are beloved. Amen.
Amen.
Well, Brené Brown says that today we live in a culture of scarcity, a culture of never enough. The never enough that teaches us that we can never have enough success or money or beauty or power to be safe, really safe. The greatest casualties of the scarcity culture are our willingness to own our own vulnerabilities and our ability to engage the world from a place of worthiness. And it seems to me that the season of Lent is an especially appropriate time to delve into those ponderings about our vulnerability, about our worthiness, about our sense of belonging, and an opportunity to build on the series from last fall on authentic happiness and human flourishing. Some of you may remember that, and you requested that we continue that conversation with Brené Brown that we began last fall. I'm delighted for that. But ultimately, we are on this journey, which we engage here with special intention in Lent. We're on this journey toward authenticity. And that's the work at hand. Indeed, that's the work, I think, of all of life, to lend it full meaning. To do that, we are going to use the resources of Dr. Brené Brown, an Episcopalian from Houston, Texas, and a researcher, social worker at the University of Houston. And she says, vulnerability is the birthplace of creativity, innovation, and change. We'll use primarily a video series that she produced in 2013, still very relevant, and it's teasing out many of the salient pieces of her 2 latest books, Daring Greatly and Rising Strong. And Greg Block from the Cathedral Shop has those. Are they still available tonight? Or so see Greg afterwards if you want. Say again?
Supplies are limited.
Supplies are limited. Get yours now. Lent is designed as a season of change, of conversion, and importantly, it takes on the structure of journey as we make our way to the cross. And vulnerability, remember, if you had taken Latin, remember that the root word is vulnus, which means wound, W-O-N-D, wound. The wounds of Christ, especially in this season, invite us to consider our own woundedness, our own brokenness, and set aside the shame that often comes with acknowledging our imperfections. That shame is not native to the human condition. It is learned. But to do this, to engage our vulnerabilities without taking on that shame, takes courage. Courage. But if we will, then we launch into a journey that leads to what she says, what Brené Brown calls wholehearted living. And remember, courage comes from the French word cœur, C-O-U-R, meaning heart. And courage is that which resides in the heart that enables us to be who we are truly created to be. To do this, you may remember, if you were here last fall, this slide, an overview of her paradigm of wholehearted living. Again, we'll be using the backdrop of a video series for this, and we'll be using table sharing, in most cases tandem sharing with someone near you. While this is not exactly a stepwise progression, don't consider it that way, but we'll build week to week, starting with a couple of videos tonight, video clips from her area of vulnerability that she speaks about. And then we move on to belonging and to gratitude and to worthiness, and we put it all together with a wholehearted living over the 5 weeks. We'll post these online, including the video recording, hopefully each week, and a PDF of the slides, so that if you can't make it to one of them, then maybe you can catch that. But obviously, the fleshiness of being here and sharing is a part of the exercise. Vulnerability is the catalyst for courage and compassion and connection. Without it, we will not really go there. It's the single most important predictor of those who are wholehearted, that is, vulnerability is. And those who are wholehearted are able to practice being vulnerable in their professional lives and their family lives, and I would add in our church lives. Belonging we'll say more about next week, and gratitude we'll say more later, and worthiness and so forth. But I want to begin with a setup video from her series entitled How To Doesn't Work. That is, How To Doesn't Work. It's about 14 minutes long, which is longer than most of the clips that we'll have during the series. I think she's entertaining enough and much more to hold our attention for those 14 minutes. But we will ask these questions of why vulnerability and shame are so difficult to deal with. So, let's figure this out. I'm going to invite you to, in just a moment, engage this work around your table, ideally with someone next to you. I would encourage you, don't engage your spouse in this setting or your partner in this setting. It's okay if that's what you want to do and that's the safe zone, but you can do that outside of the time that we have together. But I want to invite you to, we'll have it fairly structured so that we'll stay on time, but I want you to deal with these three questions. Why are vulnerability and shame such difficult things to deal with? How does the culture, and you define however you want that to be defined, convince us to believe in the myth of scarcity? And can you think of times when you've tried to use the how-to method in life, that if you just get the right info, the right moves, the right, you fill in the blank, everything will go swimmingly? And how did that work for you? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take 15 minutes, but I'm going to keep track, and it's active listening. It's not conversational. So when you're turning to your partner, you listen to that person for 2.5 minutes, and then I'll ring a bell, sound a gong, or just holler somehow, and then you switch, and you take on the active speaking, and the other one listens. And then I'll ring a bell again after 2.5 minutes, and then I would encourage you to move on to your next question, but obviously you can flow as you want. All right? Any questions about the questions? All right, go. There's never enough time, is there? It is, I can't tell you how much it warms my heart to see y'all just embrace that kind of sharing so energetically. So thank you. Would anyone like to share any of your discerned moments? And I would ask, do it that you're sharing, not your partner's sharing. Obviously, let them do it. Yeah, please.
That at my age, some of these things feel different to me in terms of my response to them than I would have felt when I was in midlife and in childhood.
So it feels different at a later age than in midlife or in childhood, that you react differently to those challenges?
That somehow or other, some of this stuff doesn't seem as important anymore as it used to. So maybe getting old has some value.
There it is. That might just be, if I could just be a little, you just don't give a shit anymore. We'll hopefully splice that part out. Others?
Have you no shame?
Marilyn, I spent 19 or 11 days on the pilgrimage with you. You ought to be careful. Others. Yep.
Well, the second question, the obvious answer is how is through, mass media and advertising. We get those messages all the time that you live in scarcity, and so it's all fear-based to drive marketing to buy things, goods and services.
Yeah.
I also shared, for me, scarcity. I grew up in a very small town in eastern Washington, and at that time, there weren't a lot of, roads were worse, and so to get groceries and other goods, like when you're in the city, you have to buy it, because you don't know when the next time you're going to be there to buy something. And so for me, it's taken a long time to realize, I'm in Seattle, things are open 24/7, I don't have to have lots of canned goods sitting on the shelves, because I can go to the store or buy something there. So the culture's there, but also how I grew up was not necessarily about fear, but just was a reality. Like, you're here, this is the time to buy things, or you're going to lose your opportunity.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Even things like refrigerators here are, full-size refrigerators, and refrigerators in Europe are the kind that you like that. And you go and you buy what you need.
yeah.
You don't store a whole lot. Well, there's the trade-off. Yeah. Others? Okay.
When I was a kid, we had a summer place that got its water from a creek, and there were 5 different places that got the water from the creek, and it was mountain water. It was pretty clean. And then somebody built a house higher up than us and dammed the creek because he was afraid he wouldn't get enough water. He couldn't even see that he was taking his water first, so nobody was going to be depriving him. But he was scared of not having enough water, so he took it away from the rest of us.
And how that could be a parable for so many ways. Yeah. Good. Well, we can continue to chew on those questions. Again, that's the setup. But I want to turn to another video clip, this one about 9 minutes long. And we won't actually discuss this since we're in our time, but I'll give you a little bit of a homework. And I'll pass that page out at the end of the time. But the homework is really just answering the questions, not unlike what we just did in tandem. But do that on your own and call up a friend this week, or go have coffee, or however you want to engage someone in it. All right. So what's coming around? One is a homework page, if you want to call it that, and it's really an invitation to ask the hard questions of yourself that Brene has invited us in that last segment. And then the other is her guideposts for wholehearted living, which are at the back of her book, Daring Greatly, which, again, Greg has a limited number of copies for sale. The guideposts are, obviously she spends a lot of time in her book fleshing those out, but at face value, they make intuitive sense, and yet stop and think about how difficult it is to practice this consistently in your life, in your workplace, in your family, for the reasons that she said, because comparison and disengagement and shame are part of what we do and how we behave. Next week we'll be building on this with looking more at shame, and we'll also unfold into the beauty of belonging as a way that we begin to open ourselves up into this. Any parting questions or comments before we break tonight? If not, I would ask, as has become our norm, if you're able and willing to stay on and help break down the tables and chairs so we can get the space ready for the 30 women who call this home here in another hour. I would be ever so grateful. If not, not a problem, but we're delighted that you're here. Go in peace to love and serve the Lord.
Thanks